Well, I grew up on comic books, and I had my favorite comic book heroes. And I would regularly flip through the pages of any Marvel comic that I could get my hands on. Sorry to you DC comic fans. And if you spend any time with people that like to read comics and love comics, you will eventually hear a conversation about which character is better or more powerful. And it really all just boils down to who the person sees themselves in or hopes that they could be in some fashion or way. And if you let those comic book fans talk long enough, a question always seems to come up in some form. What if? And there is a show on Disney Plus that even addresses this question, and it is called What If? I suspect that it was created to answer some of those late night pizza and pop-fueled ponderings of a group of friends sitting around a living room. And each show explores what would happen if the normal storyline didn't happen. Like, what if Steve Rogers didn't get the super soldier serum, but instead it was given to someone else? What if there was no Captain America? The question, what if, can be a very interesting question. So with that in mind, here's what I've been pondering this week. What if Jesus had said, okay, yes, I'll do it. Satan shows up in the wilderness and points out to Jesus that he can turn those stones into bread. Satan points out, I know you are beyond hungry. Just turn one stone into bread. What if Jesus had turned just one small stone into a small loaf of bread? Why not fill the emptiness? Not a feast, certainly not a big loaf, and certainly no butter. Just a little something to get him by. Just enough to take the edge off. Just enough to quiet the rumbling of his stomach so he could focus once again. And really, what's the harm in that? Isn't survival a priority? It seems just like a small thing, a reasonable thing. And yet Jesus says, no, one does not live on bread alone. What if? What if this story goes differently? What if in the exhaustion and the weakness, Jesus has given in? Would that have changed who he was? Would he have been any less the Son of God? We often approach this story as if Jesus had no real choice, as though he were immune to temptation. But what if he wasn't? What if these temptations were as real to him as ours are to us? Because if they aren't real, then what does the story have to do with us? If these temptations of Jesus aren't real, what does it matter? What does it teach us about our own trials? What if he had accepted the glory and the authority of all the kingdoms in the world? They are rightfully his anyway. Don't the ends justify the means? Why not free fall into the arms of angels? After all, he is the beloved Son. Wouldn't that display of power silenced all the doubts? Wouldn't it have drawn people to him more quickly, more definitively? Why struggle to convince the world when a single leap could prove beyond everything and once and for all? Wouldn't it have been easier, more effective? Yet Jesus refuses the shortcut, the easy answer, the instant gratification, and he sees through the lies of his tempter and accuser. What if Jesus had said, okay, I'll do it? Would Jesus be less beloved? Would he no longer be God's Son? Would Jesus have been a failure? Those sound like idle questions, speculations, but I don't think that they are. Jesus may not have said, okay, I'll do it, but I have. Maybe you have as well. Sometimes we hunger for attention and acceptance, approval. And each of us, I suspect, has known the hole and the emptiness of restlessness, of boredom, that sense that we are going nowhere and that life has no meaning. I suppose some of us wonder if there's anything more to retirement than just golf. No, we haven't turned a stone into a piece of bread, but we've likely filled our emptiness and fed our hunger with something less than nutritious and life-giving, something other than we know what God would want for us. We only wanted a little something to get us by, to fill the hole, to satisfy the hunger. The thing about that, whatever that little thing is, it doesn't. It doesn't fill the hole and it doesn't satisfy the hunger. It never does. It only gets us to the next fix. The hunger returns, the emptiness lingers, and the cycle continues. And think about all the ways that we attempt to satisfy our hunger. Some turn to work, pouring themselves into a job to find fulfillment. Others try to live vicariously through the lives of our children. We might not say this out loud, but we know we weren't the best player on the field, but maybe my kid can be. Others seek affirmation through social media, gauging their worth by the number of likes and comments. And some try to numb the hunger with food or alcohol or other substances. Some chase after success, status, or possessions, believing that if they just achieve one more thing, they will finally feel whole. But none of those things truly satisfy. It's like eating junk food. It provides a momentary sense of relief, but in the end, we are left just as empty as before. They promise satisfaction, but never truly deliver. They leave us craving more, and we never have quite enough. And other times we know better, but we don't do better. We take the easy way out. We do less than we really want to. We take the shortcuts through life. It's easy to justify. We say to things like to ourselves like, everyone does it. No one got hurt. I deserve it. No one knew. We say to ourselves things like the ends justify the means. But deep down, we know these justifications don't really change the reality of our choices. We know when we give in to these temptations, we are not being our truest selves, the truest selves that God created us to be. And that realization, if we allow it, can be a moment of grace. It can wake us up to the truth of our own deep hunger, to the reality that we are searching for something only God can provide. And then there are the times that we negotiate with God. Have you ever thought or perhaps prayed, if you really love me, God, if you are the God I want you to be, then catch me, give me, do for me. We may not demand that angels catch us as we jump from the pinnacle of the temple, but we test God in other ways. God, if you're really there, prove it. Fix this problem for me, take away the pain, make things easy. And when things don't go as we want, we wonder if God has abandoned us. But God is not in the business of proving love through spectacle. God does not need to prove anything. God has already declared that we are beloved. And we do that same thing here in the church every time that we baptize here at the font. The church declares a reality that is already true. You are a beloved child of God. And that truth does not waver on our circumstances. Jesus' temptations in the wilderness are not all that different from our temptations. The wilderness is not so much a place as a situation. And like Jesus, we sometimes are left alone with our own thoughts. Who am I? What is my life about? How will I get through this? In the wilderness, there will always be a voice that is quick to offer an answer, an idea, a way. Jesus was tempted in every way that we are. The difference is that Jesus said no, and sometimes we've said, okay, yes, I'll do it. In that moment, are we less beloved of God? Are we somehow less God's child? Are we a failure? Now turn the question around. If we had said no, would we be more beloved, more God's child? The duality between good and bad, right and wrong, passing and failing often underlies our understanding of temptation. How often do we see temptations as God's pop quiz? We live as if the test has been passed out and God is waiting for the results, and then we sit there waiting to get the grade back. The idea of scorekeeping by God and us is, I think, what sometimes gives Lent a bad name and what tends to keep us stuck. And today's gospel offers a way forward. Every Lent, that first Sunday of Lent, we hear the story of Jesus' temptations. The dust of Ash Wednesday has become the sand of the desert, the wilderness, the place of temptation, and we are brought face to face with the temptations of our own life. So how are we to understand them? Well, let's start with Jesus. He is baptized and immediately goes in the wilderness where he is tempted. At his baptism, the Spirit descended upon him, and the heavenly voice declared, "You are my Son, my beloved. With you I am well pleased." That's the reality before the temptation. And that's the reality for us as well. The relationship has already been established, and grace precedes temptation. Whether Jesus said yes or no did not determine his sonship, his belovedness, or how pleased God was. The temptations, the struggles in the desert did not determine how the Father would know Jesus, but how Jesus would know himself. In his struggling with his temptations, Jesus began to know himself to be filled with the Spirit and led by that same Spirit. The voice that spoke from without at his baptism was internalized and spoke from the depths of his being. Jesus' wilderness experience confirmed his baptism, and he will declare this in his first public teaching. He comes out of the desert, goes to his hometown synagogue, and reads from the prophet Isaiah. "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor, to proclaim release to the captives, recovery of sight to the blind, to free those who are oppressed, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." The temptations were not a pass-fail, but information that let Jesus understand himself. And that's what they are for us as well. And every temptation is the opportunity to recover and rediscover and affirm and claim our identity as a beloved child of God, in one in whom God is well pleased. The temptations did not establish Jesus' sonship. They helped reveal and confirm it. The temptations did not overcome his sonship, and his sonship is what overcame the temptations. And with each temptation, we learn a little bit more about ourselves. And all of this is an opportunity for a new life and a new way of being a beloved child of God. So hear this and believe it. You are a beloved child of God. Yesterday, today, tomorrow. You are the beloved. Amen.